BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Iona Ballantyne and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Friday the 1st of August. And League football is back.
That's it, there's a whistle to lips and that is it! It is 4 titles in a row for Celtic, who are confirmed as champions on Tayside. Not for the first time.
We'll guide you through the opening weekend in the Premiership. The Championship kicks off tonight with two sides renewing acquaintances after a recent League Cup meeting.
Is there a break on here? It could be 3-on-2 for Ayr United. It's Walker charging his way through, gets the pass off for Oakley, and it's a fourth for the honest men.
Newly promoted Arbroath host Ayr in this evening's opener, and triumph and tragedy in Europe last night.
Over it! Oh, it's an incredible goal! Oh, that's stunning. Midtjylland have won it. That is an unbelievable overhead kick to win this in the dying seconds of extra time.
Heartbreak for Hibs, while Dundee United make it through to the next round.
The Scottish Football Podcast.
Well, a very good morning to both of our guests, former Rangers, Dundee and Falkirk striker Rory Loy and football writer Moira Gordon. Wow, what a weekend of football we have coming up, don't we?
Yes, indeed. I cannot wait for it. The start of the league season is always one of the best, and I can't wait to see how everyone gets on over the weekend.
Moira, it feels like we've never been away.
It doesn't. I'm actually really excited about this season. I feel like this summer, I think, the World Club Championship, things like that, I know there's quality football there, but I just get a bit fed up that it's not real. So I'm looking forward to the nitty-gritty of Scottish football getting back and the closeness of it all. I think it's going to be another exciting season.
Exactly, Moira. Back to the real football. Well, let's start off with the return of the Premiership. The first game of the new season kicks off at 3:00 on Saturday as Killie host Livingston. Rory Catterwell, do you think he seems to have settled in quite well at Rugby Park?
Yeah, he does. I know a few Kilmarnock supporters who felt he was maybe the easy option at the time, the cheap option. However, I think he has slowly but surely turned around. He speaks well, Stuart Kettlewell. I think he signed well as well, I have to say. A few Scottish signs in there, some good recruitment, and they've had a decent enough group stage campaign. It hasn't all went swimmingly in terms of the Betfred Cup, but at the same time, I don't think any teams, generally speaking, does, because you've got so many new players, so many settling in periods, players getting to know each other, etc. So, look, I think he's in as good a place as he can be going into that game on Saturday, but I think it'll be a right tough test for them, because I think David Martindale's determined to shake this physicality and long ball tag and just try a different style of football.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, Moira. Livingston, they look to have built a really solid squad. Are you, I don't want to say not just confident that they'll survive this season, because Livingston do seem confident they'll survive and they really want that. Do you think they could go one better?
I think they'll survive. I think they will. Both of these teams will be in bottom six. I think just the way the league is this season, that's where they're going to be settling. But I do think that you'd be a fool to just... I think it'll be the lazy option for people just to assume that it's either going to be Livingston or Falkirk that go back down. And I think Livingston under David Martindale have punched above their weight for so many seasons up in the top flight, went down, almost reinvented themselves slightly throughout the season. They started off as Livingston, you would have known them in the Championship, but evolved into a far more, entertaining team, played a lot more football. And I think David Martindale, he's shrewd, so he'll know when he can pull that side of the game out and which fixtures will suit it. But he has no qualms about going back to playing, rudimentary football if it's going to get them a win as well. He's a wily guy. And I think it'd be foolish just to assume that they'd be the team automatically going back down. I think they'll do fairly well. I think they will survive. And I think that's down to a good mix of youth and experience in that team as well. And David Martindale, he always recruits pretty smartly as well. He finds the square peg for the square hole rather than actually just signing a player that he likes. He actually finds one that he needs, and I think they'll do okay.
Yeah, like you say, really exciting and interesting to see how they do back up in the Scottish Premiership this season. If we then look at Motherwell, they host Rangers at 5:30. The club have now received bids for Lennon Miller. Rory, do you expect even to see him out in Italy next season?
I think it's most likely that he will go abroad. And it seems, given the recent interest in Scottish players from Italy and the success of the Scottish players that have went to Italy, Lewis Ferguson amongst them, Scott McTominay, Billy Gilmore, Josh Doig, I think Shea Adams as well. I mean, there's loads. I think that there's a good chance Italy will be his next destination. I certainly expect it to be abroad. I don't think he'll stay within the country. But I do think it will happen before the end of the window. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I think Motherwell may take the stance of maybe keeping him out the squads between now and that move, because it's important for all parties. It's important for the club to get what they deserve for bringing him through. It's important for Lennon to get his move based on how well he's done and how talented he is. So I think it's best for all parties if it happens sooner rather than later, and the clubs can move on and everyone gets what they deserve out of the situation. But I do think it'll be Italy, yeah.
I say next season, of course. I mean, this season we're just about to get underway with it. But if we look at Rangers, Moira, successful in Europe midweek, how are you expecting Russell Martin's style to work in the league?
The thing is, Celtic and Rangers can play that kind of style most weeks, and it won't be an issue. It'll be interesting to see when the tougher games, whether I don't think he will dilute it in any way, really. So it'll be interesting to see. It is more of a high risk style of football, because there'll be games that you'll win comfortably. There'll be games where they'll leave themselves just slightly exposed, and you might lose a game that even a point, or that would have been, or you'll draw a game that you could have won. So it is going to be interesting to see. I think there may be one or two more drop points, which could cost them over the course of a season. But I think they'll be entertaining to watch. And I wouldn't necessarily fancy being a manager or a team on an off day coming up against them, because it's a sort of style of play and the mindset that could end up with a few teams getting a bit of a spanking this season from them.
Absolutely. It'll be, again, another interesting one. There's so much change in the Scottish Premiership, so intriguing to see how everyone's going to get on. If we move on to Celtic, they'll unveil the title flag on Sunday at home to St Mirren. Rory, do you think they've strengthened enough in this window?
Do I think they've strengthened enough? I mean, if they went into the season with this squad and kept this squad, they would certainly have a very good chance of winning the league. However, I don't think they're anywhere near finished in terms of the transfer window. I think if you look at it in the cold light of day, Kyogo's left. I know Matt O'Reilly was a decent bit of time ago now, and they've not really replaced these players to the standard of the players that have left. You've got Kuhn who's away, you've got Jota who's injured, so I don't think they're anywhere near finished. I think they'll want to try and do their business sooner rather than later, but it seems that Celtic like to wait till a little bit later in the window. I think Champions League qualification can play a part as well, I really do, in terms of the money and the level of player they may be able to attract if they've got Champions League football around the corner, as well as having a huge amount of money in the bank as well. I think all that put together might see them sign one or two more high profile players, shall we say, but Nygren looks a good player. Tierney's obviously come back into the team, but I don't think at this moment in time they're necessarily in a better place than they were at the back end of last season. But I think there's a recognition there, given the Scottish Cup final against Aberdeen, that they are lacking in certain areas, so they do need to recruit soon. Just very quickly on Rangers as well, I think it's important. If you look at last season, Hearts away, they drew 0-0, set the tone for the season. I thought season before lost to Kilmarnock 1-0 away, set the tone for the season. So I think it's huge for them on Saturday. But over the piece, I think Celtic will be probably the strongest squad going into the season.
Imperative Rangers got off to a good start and still expecting some movement at Celtic. Moira, if we move on to Falkirk, they host Dundee United on Sunday. There's not been a huge amount in this summer. Do you think they have enough strength and depth?
I think they'll still be looking to add before the transfer window closes. But John McGlynn always builds a decent squad and a squad mentality that they all fight for each other. They all know their jobs. That they're a squad that have the momentum of, promotions and winning. So they'll go into the season feeling quite confident. I watched them at the weekend and they're still playing very similar branded football. They'll stay true to what they do well. Again, it's sometimes tricky. Some games you need to have a wee bit more dig in the top flight to try and combat the quality the greater quality they'll come up against compared to the Championship. But again, I admire John McGlynn and his squad building ability and his management style. And again, I don't think there'll be a pushover for anybody. I think coming up, people again look at the Championship teams as maybe the soft touches. That we've seen in the last few years, that's not necessarily the case, and I think we'll see that again this year.
Not one to be taken lightly. And then if we look at Hibs, who travelled to Dundee, Simon Murray, he's asked for patience from Dundee fans as Stephen Presley's ideas set in. Do you think they've turned a corner after that disappointing start in the League Cup, Rory? Although their wins in the League Cup, they were still against lower league sides.
No, I don't think they've turned a corner necessarily, but at the same time, going out of the League Cup at this stage for a club like Dundee, who are one of these clubs who sit in the pyramid where in Scottish football where they're capable of a cup run simply because they're a Premier League club if they can get good draws. So they'll be disappointed. I think Sunday presents a completely clean slate for Stephen Presley and Dundee. I do understand it's been a poor start, but it's the start of the league campaign. The only winners out of last night's Hibs tie, given that Hibs went out and went to extra time, were Dundee. So Stephen Presley will be looking at this going, look, let's change the narrative. Let's go and win on Sunday. Beat the team that finished third last year, get the crowd up at home, and approach the season in a positive frame of mind. And it is going to take time, but I also think that the Dundee board, given their actions in sacking Tony Docherty, and that's not Stephen Presley's fault, have put an unnecessary amount of pressure on Stephen Presley because the Dundee fans were so split and so frustrated, I think, at times with the sacking, that it automatically puts more pressure on the new manager, which isn't fair on Stephen Presley. But I think he'll see Sunday as a clean slate and a chance to go and start the season well.
And that's the thing, Moira, you hear Stephen Presley, it's very much managing expectation too, isn't it?
He is, but in terms of, I almost laughed when Simon Murray came out and said, we're calling for patience. I mean, that's a commodity that's in short supply in football, Scottish football especially. And we saw already at Dundee, that ship sailed. It sailed it by the first 45 minutes of the first game. Fans were already, as Rory said, they're set up to expect less because it isn't the manager they wanted. So I think it's going to be a tough one. I agree with Rory. I think the best thing for Dundee is the fact that Hibs, as we've seen in previous years, you come out of European matches and go into the league and teams, especially out with Celtic and Rangers, struggle. So it could be a benefit for them that Hibs were playing last night. But I still fear a bit for Dundee this year. We've seen how important momentum is, and I know like Hibs flipped that last season, a poor start and still came round. But it's not very often you see a team having a poor start and managing to come back. It's such a competitive league that, you don't want to lose ground early doors. And I fear a little bit for Dundee in that regard.
Well, one more sleep. The Scottish Premiership is back. All the games are available on Sportsound. Your Saturday starts with Off the Ball at 12 o'clock. So let's take a look at the Championship. Arbroath against Ayr in the opening game tonight. Rory, Arbroath, would you expect them to come in on a high following their promotion?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. They had a good League Cup group stage as well. Decent, solid. So I was covered. St Mirren Ayr last week for Sports Sound, and Ayr were really quite poor in the first half, but outstanding in the second half. So going up there, playing on our Arbroath side, that I think it's difficult to know exactly how they'll approach it. I know David Gold. I know he's a good coach. He's a good manager. He's done fantastically well since he's went in there with the kind of co-manager set up. And I think that Arbroath will be good to watch. I think they've made some decent signings, and they've got the momentum of winning the league last year. So, look, I think there's every chance this could be a cracking game tonight.
Moira, would you say playoffs a minimum expectation now for Ayr? They've made a lot of changes over the summer. They were free scoring in the League Cup.
Yeah, definitely. I think the way they finished last season, they were disappointed that they didn't get more from their campaigns. So I think they're having been over the course last season as well, got that close. They will definitely be pushing for promotion again this season. And I would think that playoffs is a bare minimum the manager will expect, let alone the fans.
Jude Bonner's one to watch, Iona. He was excellent last week, really good on loan from Celtic.
Mm-hmm. Well, if we look at St Johnstone at home to Partick Thistle, they had a strong start in the League Cup. St Johnstone, do you think they can keep that going in the league?
I think they'll be an interesting team to watch this season. A lot of people, when manager came in at the end of last season, liked maybe his positivity, the way he tried to play football, but you're in the Championship, so a different test than being a relegation side in the Premiership and being at the title challengers or, one of the favourites in the Championship. So I think it'll be interesting to see just how they go about the style of play that they will employ and just how effective it's going to be. Again, I think it's going to be one of those seasons where they'll be do really well, or it's going to be a bit more stuttering. And I think it's hard to tell until window closes for a start, because I think there'll probably be a wee bit more business from the teams that are wanting to win the title, and also just to see again how good a start. The start, I think, is going to be important for teams like that people want to see whether they've actually got a bit of gravitas, a bit of swagger coming down from the top flight, or whether they're a bit like, unsure of their surroundings and taking a while to adapt.
Mm-hmm. Well, we move on to Ross County. They then travel to Airdrie amid speculation over the future of Ronan Hale. How vital could his goals be for them this season, Rory?
Oh, they'll be huge. They'll be huge. They really will. I know Don Cowie will feel the pressure after relegation last season, going out of the League Cup at such an early stage. Some disappointing results, especially that last one against Partick Thistle. But in terms of Ronan Hale, look, work ethic will get you a certain amount of goals in the top flight simply by working hard, closing down. In the Championship, it will get you a ton of goals because he's quick, he never gives up, his attitude's great, and he does have quality as well, and he can finish. So if he stays at Ross County, you'd be earmarking between 15 and 20 goals for him in this season for sure, and that'll probably just be the league campaign. So if they were to lose him, which they may, it's going to be very difficult to replace him, because getting a player in that's going to guarantee you those figures and numbers is extremely difficult. So Don Cowie, who's had a difficult start, will be desperate to keep what some people view as his star man.
Crucial part of that squad. And then we look at Queen's Park. Moira, they face Wraith Rovers in Kirkcaldy. A lot of turmoil at Queen's Park. Do you think they may find it tough this season?
Yeah, I think any team that's gone through as much of an overhaul as they have, again, it takes time for it to settle. As I keep going back to it, I think momentum and getting started well is important. And I think it's tougher when you bring so many new faces in, and you're trying to gel quickly and get going. I think last season they struggled, and I'm not sure it's going to be significantly better this season. I think, they might improve slightly, but again, it's such a competitive league that you need to make pretty decent strides to actually move up that table from where they were last year in terms of quality and competitiveness.
Well, the Scottish Championship gets back underway tonight. You can watch Arbroath versus Ayr on the BBC Scotland channel from 7:30. So finally, Hibs and Dundee United played their European second legs last night. What an atmosphere at Easter Road, Rory, but what a cruel way for them to go out.
Oh yeah, I mean Michelin, I think when the tie was made, people maybe felt they might be a little bit too strong for Hibs, but I mean, as David Gray said, it's taken 3 sublime strikes to knock them out over 2 legs. It really has. I think David Gray's biggest disappointment was they've went through all of that, the travel, the good performances, strong performances, and they've got nothing to show for it now. And not only that, they've got Partizan Belgrade in the next round, which is a tough tie in itself. In between that, a trip to Dundee. So I think he'd be disappointed, really disappointed, first and foremost, that they're out, but also the toll that the 2 legs may have taken on them, especially given that last night went to extra time. You've played 120 minutes there. You've got effectively 2 full days to recover. The boys will not do much training today at all, even if they're even in. And then on Saturday it'll just be a case of a few walkthroughs and stuff. So I think he'll just be disappointed at the level of effort that's went into the last 2 ties, and they've got nothing to show for it. It's different if they go through the tie, because if they're through, it was worth it. But they're now sitting in a situation where, as Moira's touched on, teams in Europe at this stage have struggled to pick up league results, and you don't want to get that momentum of negativity too early. But I thought they showed up really well over the 2 legs, and it'll be interesting to see how they do on Sunday.
Well, that's the thing, Moira. They did give everything across those 2 games. What can they take from this? These qualifiers?
I think it was interesting, Dave Gray coming in last night and talking about how flat and deflated the dressing room is. What they'll take from it is if they can come back from that and actually get a result at the weekend, they'll take huge, boost from the resilience and the fact that they can maybe compete on 2 fronts, which is huge going forward for the next ties. But what they'll also take is sometimes in defeat, and a glorious defeat like that, and I don't know, Rory will maybe talk about or know better, but you get a togetherness. They're unified in the fact they feel hard done by, or that they know that they put everything into it and it didn't quite come out. So you'll look at the guy next to you and know that he was willing to put in a shift against decent quality. And although it was a defeat, you'll know that you want to come through it together. And I think they've got that togetherness in that squad anyway, which will hopefully, for their sake, help them when it comes to going into the game on Saturday. But they also can take credit from the fact they played a very good team. And, we're not going to kid ourselves and say they're Champions League level opposition, but it was a very good team. And they pushed them right to the very limit. And as Rory said, it took wonder strikes to actually, split them and separate them to end that Europa dream. So there's a lot of positives to take from it. They'll maybe not feel it last night in the dressing room. They'll maybe not feel it first thing this morning when they wake up and it hits them again. But I think they'll be bonded together and know that they've got a bit of quality there and that they can actually take on decent opposition and show up pretty well.
Rory, do you think they'll have more of a chance progressing in the Conference League now?
I mean, the standard. I mean, the Conference League is obviously a step down from the Europa League, but I think they've been pretty unlucky, to be honest, with their draws. I mean, getting Midtjylland is tough in the first place. I think they're synonymous, really, Midtjylland. In terms of trying to qualify for the Champions League. I agree with Moira; they're not Champions League standard, but they're often quite. They're often in the mix to try and qualify for it at the very least, and then to draw Partizan Belgrade, who, don't get me wrong, I know in years and decades gone by they're a stronger team than they are today in a kind of bigger club, but I think it's a tough ask, I really do. But as Moira says, they'll take great confidence from the fact that we're competitive against Midtjylland. But I know that managers bore us to tears at times by saying we're just concentrating on the next game, etc. However, I do think that will be the case with David Gray. He cannot start the season like he started last season in the league. He cannot do it. And I mean, you think where Hibs would have been if they actually had a good quarter at the start of the season last year. They were doing right up there next to Rangers. So I think Sunday's of massive importance, but I think Partizan Belgrade is one of the toughest draws they could have got.
Well, if you look at Dundee United, they made it through a bit of a disjointed performance, Moira, would you say?
It was, but again, sometimes it's hard for, especially like Scottish clubs coming into it. You've hardly had any pre-season, or you've just come out of pre-season, as it were, and you're suddenly going into these games that matter hugely, and they might not be glamorous opposition, and it's a team that people maybe looked at and thought Dundee United should be beaten. But it's still, you've still got to go and do that. There's still that pressure. Again, it goes back to there's still new faces in the squad. It's a newish experience for a lot of players there as well, playing European football. So you don't want to fall at the first hurdle, especially when you're playing those Conference League ones. So there's pressure on it, there's expectation on it, and whether it was stuttering or not, they got the job done. And that's what any manager will tell you. They're more than happy with this stage of the season. Just get the job done, stay in the fight, and, you know, just try and build into the competition or into the next round.
Well, Rory, Zach Sapsford with an assist last night, adding to his goal from last week. He looks like quite an exciting young player, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, and Jim Goodwin, I would say, his recruitment last year was very, very good. We talk about recruitment in this day and age as being, you know, so important and so big, and we tend to focus on the people that get it wrong because, you know, they may be struggling in the league or players aren't performing. But Jim Goodwin was an example last year of getting his recruitment absolutely bang on to come up from the Championship. I know he's had a bit of criticism, which I don't think he'll be too fazed about, but the fact the lack of Scottish players in the squad and the team. But that's not Jim Goodwin's problem at the end of the day. He's out there to win games, and I think he does look like a really strong signing, and he'll be hoping that he can produce the goods moving forward in the league as well. So I think everyone will be itching to get the first league game underway and try and suss each other out.
Absolutely. And then for Dundee United, Rapid Vienna up next for them, Moira. Do you think that's going to be a big jump in quality?
Yeah, I think that goes without saying that it's a different calibre side that they're going to be meeting in the next round. So it is going to be a test. That's the problem with Scottish teams. I mean, we get through the first round we're feeling good about that, and then you suddenly look at who you're coming up against, and it suddenly hits home just how tough European games are compared to maybe the bread and butter of some games in the league. So I think it will be a tough one for them. It's a tough ask to come through that. But again, it depends on, as Rory said, if you can get a few, you know, a decent performance or so in the league, go into it with your tails up, feeling a bit better about yourself, then they'll go out and give it their best. But I'm not sure I would be betting too much because I do think it's another tough ask.
But just even with that result last night for Dundee United, progression in Europe for the first time in 28 years. That is a big moment for United, Rory.
Yeah, no, it is. It's massive. Moira touched on the fact that it's new to a lot of players. That was Jim Goodwin's first ever away tie in Europe as a manager. So to progress in a tie after that length of time, such a long period of time, would have been probably quite nostalgic for a lot of the older supporters. And, you know, a brand new element to being a fan is for the younger generation. So look, Jim Goodwin's done really, really well. You know, a manager who was questioned when he was first appointed, questioned when he won the league last year, a couple of seasons ago, because he didn't do it in the most glamorous fashion. Last season, I don't think there was a lot of questions. Thought they were really good from the outset. He's continued that into next season. You know, a little bit of history made after such a long time, and they've got a fighting chance against Rapid Vienna, but Rapid Vienna are certainly favourites.
Well, a big moment indeed for Dundee United. Well, that is all we have got time for this morning. Many thanks to Rory Loy and Moira Gordon, and thank you for listening. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day. So to make sure you don't miss out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on your phone. Get ready for a bumper weekend because Scottish football is well and truly back. Goodbye for now.
For everything you need to know about your team this season, download the BBC Sport app. All the latest news, goal updates, stats and scores, and insight and analysis. Just select your club to get the biggest stories and best content at your fingertips. What a result. Download the BBC Sport app for everything you need to know about your team this season.